Elena Rodriguez had a problem that made her superiors' lives miserable. She was good at her job. Too good. At 34, with over 2,000 flight hours logged as a technical pilot, specializing in test flights for newly received helicopter models, Elena had earned a reputation that kept the brass awake at night. She was notorious for being what they called picky and fault-finding, though Elena preferred the term thorough. The incident that really put her on their bad side happened 6 months ago. She'd refused to approve an entire batch of 12 helicopters due to structural misalignments in their tail rotor assemblies. 12 helicopters. $12 million worth of aircraft sitting in the hangar because Elena Rodriguez wouldn't sign off on acceptable enough. Her superiors didn't just dislike Elena, they despised everything she represented. She wouldn't accept the usual gifts that smoothed over inspections. She wouldn't go along with the unspoken understanding that good enough kept the paperwork moving and the contracts flowing. Worst of all, she documented everything. Every discrepancy, every concern, every conversation. In their eyes, Elena was the kind of person who made their jobs harder, who asked too many questions, who demanded perfection when mediocrity would keep everyone happy and the money flowing. Chief Warrant Officer Martinez had made his feelings clear during their last performance review. Rodriguez, you need to understand that mission readiness sometimes means accepting calculated risks. We're not building civilian aircraft here. But Elena knew the difference between calculated risks and negligent shortcuts. She'd seen what happened when corners got cut in military aviation. She'd attended too many memorial services for pilots who died because someone decided good enough was actually good enough. The morning of the incident started like any other. Elena arrived at the hangar at 0600 hours, coffee in hand, ready to review the technical specifications for her assigned aircraft. But something felt different. The usual chatter among mechanics was subdued, and she noticed several of them avoiding eye contact. Even more telling, Sergeant Murphy, one of the few mechanics who still spoke honestly with her, looked genuinely worried when he saw her approaching. That was never a good sign. Chief Warrant Officer Martinez handed her the flight assignment with unusual terseness. Elena, we need this bird back in service by 1400 hours. The battalion is counting on it. Don't overthink things like you usually do. The helicopter in question was a UH-60 Black Hawk that had just finished what the paperwork called routine maintenance. But Elena had seen the maintenance logs and nothing about them looked routine. She'd noticed the rush signatures, the abbreviated inspection notes, the missing safety checks that should have been standard protocol. The aircraft sat on the tarmac like a sleeping giant, but Elena's trained eye immediately picked up details that made her stomach clench. Fresh paint covered sections of the fuselage that shouldn't have needed repainting. The rotor assembly showed signs of recent work, but the bolts looked inconsistent. Some were new. Others showed wear patterns that didn't match the maintenance timeline. As she completed her walk-around inspection, Sergeant Murphy approached her quietly. "Ma'am, I shouldn't be telling you this, but double quotes." He glanced around nervously. "They wouldn't dare give this bird to anyone else. You know how this works. If something happens up there, it's pilot error, not system failure." Elena studied the aircraft from every angle. The electrical panels had scratches around the screws, indicating multiple recent openings. The hydraulic lines looked newer than they should have been. Everything pointed to extensive hurried repairs that someone was trying very hard to hide. Still, Elena made her decision. She climbed into the cockpit, knowing that backing down would only confirm their opinion of her as someone who created problems where none existed. But as she strapped herself in, she whispered something that would prove prophetic. "I'm not flying because I trust them. I'm flying to find out what they're hiding." The pre-flight checks revealed inconsistencies that should have grounded the aircraft immediately. Gauge readings seemed off. System responses felt sluggish. Every instinct Elena had developed over 8 years of test flying told her something was fundamentally wrong with this helicopter. But she also knew that if she refused to fly without concrete evidence of a safety violation, she'd be labeled as the pilot who was afraid of her own shadow. In the testosterone-heavy world of military aviation, that was a reputation that could end careers. As she powered up the systems, Elena began recording everything through her headset recorder, a habit that had saved her more than once when post-flight debriefings got creative with the facts. The helicopter shuddered violently after just 3 minutes of flight. The pressure gauge spinning backward defied all logic and physics, but Elena's training kicked in before her mind could fully process what she was seeing. She immediately switched to manual control, cutting off the central control system that was clearly feeding her false information. At 800 feet, fighting to stabilize an aircraft that seemed determined to tear itself apart, Elena began noticing details that turned her blood cold. The primary electrical harness showed signs of recent modification, with multiple wires connected in reverse polarity. This wasn't poor maintenance. Someone with advanced technical knowledge had deliberately sabotaged this helicopter. The auxiliary engine warning light blazed red, joined seconds later by hydraulic pressure alarms and electrical system failure indicators. But Elena didn't panic. Instead, she began methodically testing each backup system, documenting every failure, every anomaly through her headset recorder. What she discovered was systematic. Every redundant safety system had been compromised in some way. The people who'd done this hadn't just wanted the helicopter to fail. They'd wanted to ensure that failure would be catastrophic and untraceable. To sabotage. Control. This is Test Flight 77, she radioed, her voice professionally calm despite the chaos surrounding her. I'm experiencing multiple system failures consistent with sabotage, not mechanical failure. Requesting immediate emergency. Landing clearance. The response from ground control was telling, Test Flight 77, negative on sabotage assessment. Continue standard emergency procedures. Elena realized in that moment that the people on the ground weren't surprised by her mayday call. They were expecting it. Through a combination of skill, experience, and sheer determination, Elena executed a textbook auto-rotation landing that demonstrated why she'd survived 8 years of test flying when others hadn't. But as she sat in the cockpit after touchdown, her hands still shaking from adrenaline, she knew her real problems were just beginning. When Elena shut down the engines and stepped out of the cockpit, she expected the standard post-incident protocol. Immediate debriefing, technical inspection, detailed incident report. Instead, she was met with something far more suspicious. Elena, just hand over the aircraft, Chief Martinez said, not meeting her eyes. No need for a technical report this time. We'll handle the investigation internally. You're released for the day. In 8 years of test flying, Elena had never been told not to file a report. It was the most fundamental part of her job, documenting what went wrong so it could be fixed and other pilots wouldn't face the same dangers. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She kept replaying the flight in her mind, analyzing every system. Failure, every warning light, every moment when the helicopter had tried to kill her. But more than the technical failures, she couldn't stop thinking about the reaction on the ground. No surprise, no concern, no urgency to understand what had gone wrong. Just relief that she'd landed alive and a clear message that her survival was inconvenient for someone. At 0200 hours, Elena made a decision that would change everything. Using her security clearance, she returned to the hangar and carefully photographed the helicopter before anyone could begin repairs. She documented the reversed wiring, the mismatched bolt patterns, and most importantly, she carefully removed the main electrical control panel. What she found confirmed her worst suspicions: a circuit board bearing the part number XM741, a component that had been subject to a mandatory recall 2 years ago due to critical safety defects that caused exactly the kind of system failure she'd experienced. Someone hadn't just installed defective parts. They deliberately installed recalled components that were known to be deadly. The next morning, Sergeant Murphy approached Elena with the nervous energy of a man carrying dangerous secrets. "Ma'am, I shouldn't be doing this, but..." He handed her a manila envelope, copies of the real maintenance records. "Look at the timestamps." Elena spread the documents across her kitchen table, and the pattern became undeniable. Inspection approvals had been backdated. Safety checks that required 8 hours had been logged as completed in 20 minutes. Signatures appeared on documents dated before the mechanics had even reported for duty. "This isn't carelessness," Elena told Murphy when she called him that evening. "Someone is systematically installing defective components and falsifying records to cover it up. And when pilots die in crashes, it gets written off as pilot error, not equipment failure." Murphy's voice was barely above a whisper. "Ma'am, you don't understand how deep this goes. The same parts, the same rushed inspections, it's happening across multiple aircraft. But everyone who's tried to speak up has either been transferred out or, well, let's just say their concerns got filed away permanently." Elena spent the next 3 days conducting her own investigation, using her security clearance to access maintenance records, procurement documents, and incident reports from the past 2 years. The scope of the conspiracy was staggering. The same recalled parts appeared in maintenance records across multiple aircraft. The same suspiciously brief inspection notes. The same pattern of rushed approvals followed by mysterious accidents that were always blamed on human error rather than mechanical failure. But Elena had something the previous whistleblowers hadn't. She was still alive, and she had irrefutable evidence of deliberate sabotage. The recalled part number XM7741 appeared in 17 different aircraft maintenance records over the past 18 months. 17 helicopters flying with components that the manufacturer had specifically warned could cause catastrophic system failures. More damning was the financial trail. The defective parts cost 60% less than their properly manufactured replacements. Someone was pocketing hundreds of thousands of dollars by installing components they knew could kill pilots. Elena faced a choice that would define not just her career, but possibly her life. She could file a complaint through official channels and watch it disappear into the same bureaucratic black hole that had swallowed previous concerns. She could request a transfer and let someone else deal with the problem. Or she could do something that no one would expect from the difficult pilot who asked too many questions. Elena submitted a formal request to fly the same helicopter again. The request landed on Chief Martinez's desk like a bombshell. "She wants to what?" he asked his deputy, reading the paperwork twice to make sure he understood correctly. But Elena hadn't just requested another test flight. She'd done something unprecedented in military aviation. She'd requested witnesses, official witnesses. She wanted the entire command staff, technical representatives from the manufacturer, and safety inspectors from division headquarters to observe her demonstration flight. "I want to demonstrate exactly what happened during my previous flight," Elena announced at the pre-flight briefing she'd arranged. "I want you to see it with your own eyes, and I want it all on record." Her superiors were caught completely off guard. They had expected Elena to quietly file a complaint, maybe request a transfer to another unit. They hadn't expected her to turn their cover-up into a public demonstration with official witnesses and documentation. Chief Martinez tried to regain control, Warrant Officer Rodriguez. This is highly irregular. We don't need to waste everyone's time with... Sir, Elena interrupted, her voice steady and professional. I'm exercising my right under military. Regulation 385-95 to request witness verification of safety concerns. Unless you're ordering me not to follow established safety protocols? The room went silent. Elena had just put Martinez in an impossible position. He couldn't refuse the demonstration without appearing to obstruct safety procedures, but allowing. It meant giving Elena exactly the platform she needed to expose everything. Elena had spent 3 sleepless nights preparing for this moment. She'd installed multiple cameras throughout the cockpit, each angle designed to capture different aspects of the aircraft's performance. She'd prepared technical charts, system diagrams, and most importantly, she'd gathered irrefutable evidence of the sabotage that she was ready to present. As the helicopter reached 600 meters altitude, the familiar violent shaking began. But this time, Elena didn't immediately correct the problems. For several heart-stopping seconds, she allowed the aircraft to demonstrate its instability, letting the command staff on the ground witness the full extent of the malfunction through her live radio transmission and the video feed she'd arranged. Control, you're monitoring all systems, correct? Her voice remained professionally calm, even as the helicopter bucked and rolled like an angry bull. Engine failure indicators active. Pressure gauge showing reverse readings. Complete electrical system instability. This is not pilot error. This is systematic equipment failure. Through her headset, she could hear the tension in ground controls. Voice. The witnesses were seeing exactly what she wanted them to see. An aircraft that should never have been cleared for flight. Then Elena demonstrated why she'd survived 8 years of test flying. She executed a perfect emergency maneuver sequence, rapid descent, auto-rotation entry, controlled flare, and touchdown that was so smooth it looked routine. Anyone watching could see that only exceptional skill and experience had prevented what should have been a fatal crash. When Elena stepped out of the cockpit, she wasn't finished. She'd prepared a comprehensive presentation that she delivered right there on the tarmac. Video footage from multiple angles, technical documentation, forensic evidence, and financial records she'd obtained through official channels. This is not an isolated incident, Elena announced, displaying photographs of similar defective parts found in 6 other aircraft on the base. This is a systematic pattern of equipment fraud that has been ongoing for at least 3 years, involving kickbacks, falsified inspections, and the deliberate installation of recalled components. Colonel Henderson, the division's safety inspector, stepped forward. Warrant Officer Rodriguez, these are serious allegations. Do you have documentation to support? Elena handed him a thick folder. Sir, I have part numbers of recalled components, forged inspection signatures, financial connections between base personnel and the contractor supplying defective parts, and bank records showing suspicious payments to key maintenance supervisors. The evidence was overwhelming. Elena had documented everything with the same obsessive attention to detail that had made her superiors hate her. But now that obsessive thoroughness was destroying their carefully constructed house of cards, Chief Martinez tried one last desperate gambit. Colonel, Warrant Officer Rodriguez has a history of being overly critical of standard maintenance procedures. Perhaps we should consider the source of these allegations. Elena smiled for the first time in weeks. Sir, I anticipated that response. She handed Colonel Henderson another folder. These are recorded conversations from my headset during both flights, transcripts of maintenance briefings, and sworn statements from Sergeant Murphy and 3 other mechanics who were afraid to come forward until now. The investigation that followed was swift and devastating. 3 engineers were suspended within 24 hours. Chief Martinez was relieved of command pending court-martial proceedings. The contractor, Apex Military Systems, saw their security clearances revoked and faced criminal charges for fraud and endangering military personnel. But Elena's investigation had revealed something even more shocking than local corruption. The procurement records Elena had obtained showed that Apex Military Systems had been supplying defective equipment to multiple military installations across 3 states, bribing officials at each location to approve substandard parts while pocketing millions in cost savings. Colonel Henderson assembled a joint task force to investigate the full scope of the conspiracy. Elena found herself at the center of the largest military procurement scandal investigation in a decade, providing testimony to military investigators, FBI agents, and congressional oversight committees. During the formal investigation hearings, Elena faced a question everyone wanted answered. Chief Warrant Officer Rodriguez, why did you risk your life to fly that helicopter a second time? Her answer became legendary in military aviation. Circles. Sir, dead pilots can't testify about what happened to them. Living pilots can prove systematic sabotage and save other lives. I flew that helicopter because someone needed to survive the experience and document the truth. The financial scope of the fraud was staggering. Apex had been systematically substituting recalled or substandard components across multiple product lines, not just helicopter parts. Their scheme had affected everything from communication equipment to vehicle components, putting thousands of military personnel at risk while generating over $40 million in illegal profits. Elena's case became a model for military investigators. She'd proven that corruption could be exposed, but only through meticulous documentation, courage under pressure, and the willingness to risk everything for the truth. The contractor lost $60 million in military contracts. 14 officials across multiple bases faced court-martial proceedings. APEX's CEO and 3 vice presidents were indicted on federal charges of fraud, conspiracy, and reckless endangerment. But for Elena, the most satisfying moment came when she received a letter from Lieutenant Jennifer Walsh, a helicopter pilot stationed in Germany. Ma'am, because of your investigation, they discovered the same defective parts in our aircraft. Your courage saved my life and the lives of my crew. We'll never meet, but you're the reason I'm going home to my family next month. Elena turned down the promotion to major they offered her. She also declined the Distinguished Flying Cross, the transfer to a prestigious assignment at the Pentagon, and the opportunity to become a public spokesperson for military integrity. Instead, she submitted a request that surprised everyone. She wanted to become a technical instructor for new aviators at the base flight school. They don't need to know how many combat hours I have or how many medals I've earned, she told her first class of student pilots. They just need to know one thing. If you have doubts about your aircraft, investigate. No matter what anyone tells you, no matter how much pressure you face, no matter who gets angry with you. Elena's classroom became different from every other military training environment. She didn't just teach technical procedures and safety protocols. She taught something more valuable: the courage to trust your instincts even when everyone around you is telling you to ignore them. One of her students, Second Lieutenant Jackson, asked the question everyone wondered about. Ma'am, what if you had actually crashed during that second flight? Elena paused, looking out the window at the flight line where helicopters were being prepared for daily missions. Then at least I wouldn't have crashed because I was blindfolded by people I trusted. And maybe my crash would have prevented 10 others. The room fell silent as the weight of her words sank in. Your job as a pilot isn't just to fly aircraft. Elena continued. It's to make sure every aircraft you touch is safe for the next pilot who climbs into that cockpit. That pilot might be your best friend. They might be someone you've never met. But they're counting on you to be thorough, to be demanding, to be the kind of person who won't accept good enough when lives are at stake. Elena wrote a motto in bold letters across the whiteboard that became legendary among her students. No technical error is too small if it can take a human life. Elena's influence spread quietly through military aviation. She became the instructor that experienced pilots recommended to their younger colleagues, not because she was easy on them, but because they knew she would never let them fly unsafe aircraft. Her standards remained impossibly high, but now everyone understood why. In her evening classes for maintenance personnel, Elena taught a different kind of lesson. Your signature on an inspection report isn't just paperwork. It's a promise to the pilot's family that you've done everything possible to bring them home safely. The maintenance crews who attended Elena's classes became known throughout the base for their thoroughness. What had once been seen as Elena's fault-finding obsession was now recognized as the gold standard for aviation safety. Sergeant Murphy, who had risked his career to provide Elena with the evidence she needed, was promoted to staff sergeant and became Elena's co-instructor. Ma'am taught me that integrity isn't about being popular, he would tell new mechanics. It's about being able to sleep at night, knowing you did everything right. 3 years after the PEX scandal broke, the base had achieved the lowest accident rate in its history. More importantly, it had developed a culture where questioning safety procedures was seen as professional responsibility, not insubordination. Elena received letters from pilots across the military who had been inspired by her story to speak up about their own safety concerns. Each letter represented lives saved, accidents prevented, and the gradual transformation of military aviation culture. But Elena's greatest achievement wasn't the prosecutions or the policy changes. It was the day Lieutenant Jackson, now a seasoned pilot, grounded an entire squadron of aircraft because he'd noticed inconsistencies in their maintenance logs. "Ma'am," he told Elena when he called to report his decision, "I kept hearing your voice asking me what was more important, making people happy or keeping pilots alive." The investigation Jackson triggered revealed another procurement fraud scheme, smaller than Apex, but potentially just as deadly. His courage to speak up had been directly inspired by Elena's example. Years later, when Elena's name was mentioned in pilot lounges and maintenance hangars, people knew they were hearing about someone special, not because she was a traditional hero, but because she'd proven that integrity wasn't just about personal character. It was about protecting the people who depended on your expertise and honesty. Elena never sought publicity for what she'd done. She didn't write a book, didn't give interviews to military publications, didn't speak at conferences. But her influence was felt every time a pilot questioned a maintenance sign-off. Every time a mechanic refused the Russian inspection. Every time someone chose professional integrity over personal convenience. The broken helicopter they'd given her had been meant to break her spirit and silence her questions. Instead, it became the foundation for a legacy of uncompromising safety standards that would protect aviators for generations. On her final day, as an instructor before retirement, Elena gathered her last class of students for one final lesson. "The most important thing I can teach you isn't how to fly helicopters. It's how to have the courage to ground them when they're not safe." She pointed to a photograph on her desk, not of herself receiving awards or shaking hands with generals, but of a young pilot named Lieutenant Rodriguez, no relation, who had safely landed a damaged aircraft after following procedures Elena had developed. That pilot is alive today because someone before him had the courage to demand that aircraft meet the highest safety standards. Someday, a pilot you've never met will be alive because you had the same courage. Elena's story teaches us that integrity isn't just a personal virtue. It's a responsibility we owe to everyone who depends on our expertise and honesty. The most powerful lesson from her experience is this: don't let honest people stand alone in their pursuit of truth. When someone raises legitimate safety concerns or questions suspicious practices, Support them rather than dismissing them as troublemakers. In our own professional lives, we all face moments where we can choose the easy path of looking the other way or the harder path of speaking up about problems we've discovered. Elena's courage reminds us that sometimes the most important battles aren't fought in dramatic moments. They're fought in quiet decisions to do what's right when no one is watching. True heroism isn't always about grand gestures. Sometimes it's about having the quiet courage to ask uncomfortable questions, document the truth, and protect the people who trust you with their lives. Elena Rodriguez proved that when they give you a broken helicopter designed to silence you, you can choose to land it safely and expose the truth instead. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to die quietly. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and become a part of our Everyday Life Stories community. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. We love hearing from our amazing viewers around the world.